The ridiculous news that the EU has joined a long list of peace activists, including Henry Kissinger and Barack Obama, in winning the Nobel Peace Prize. The European Union being a group of countries which just in my lifetime have bombed Yugoslavia, occupied Kosovo, bombed Bosnia, sent troops into Sierra Leone, conducted a now 11-year war in Afghanistan, killed 1 million Iraqi civilians, bombed Libya, has 6 nuclear states, and has one member state, Ireland, under a part military occupation by another member state, Britain, all very peaceful. These wars, violence, killings and aggression are morally reprehensible, and as other speakers have said, have had a terrible impact on the people in those countries. But not only that, they're incredibly expensive. Hardly a day goes by when you won't hear a Tory politician say there's no money left, yet they manage to find £12 million a day to spend on a war in Afghanistan. They say there's no alternative to hiking fees, privatising the National Health Service and slashing benefits for the disabled. But somehow George Osborne managed to cobble together £1.75 billion to bomb Libya last year. As Ken Livingstone has pointed out time and time again, with the amount Britain has spent on merely the war in Afghanistan over the past decade, an estimated $20 billion and still rising, we could easily have funded free education. The cost of these imperialist follies is decimating our universities and locking disadvantaged people out of education. Compare the £900 million worth of subsidies given to arms companies every year by the government to the £560 million cost of EMA. Which of these should we really consider to be unaffordable? It's not only morally wrong to subsidise the profits of war, it's also morally wrong to deny a generation of young people a future through education. Iran and Syria are set to be the next targets for imperialism, with the war drums already beating loudly in the media. NATO's involvement in the Libyan civil war has prepared the ground for what liberal interventionism looks like in the public's mind, and has been roundly declared a success by the political classes. Nothing could be further from the truth. Mission creep pushed NATO from their sanctioned protection of civilians to regime change, and not for the first time in the Arab world. NATO's mission was an utter failure when it came to saving lives. The death toll for their 8th-month intervention stood at between 30 to 50,000, compared to the 1 to 2,000 people that were killed before the Western military involvement. These inconvenient and gruesome facts will not get in the way of those advocating an attack on Iran. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is said to have already moved his preparations from planning to implementation, and as a leader of a nuclear state, continues to repeat the threat to Tehran that all options are on the table. The Ministry of Defence have said they have contingency plans for an attack on Iran, and the UK government have indicated they would be prepared to support Western military action. Iran is accused of being a rogue state with the intentions of developing weapons of mass destruction. Iran is accused of funding and supporting terrorist groups. Iran is accused of posing an imminent threat to Israel and the West. This all sounds very familiar, but remember, as they keep on telling us, Iran just isn't like Iraq. And who are we in Britain anyway to tell Iran or anyone else that they can't have nuclear weapons when we're currently in the process of renewing our own weapons of mass destruction, the Trident nuclear submarine? This weapon system is capable of wiping out millions, and when used in conjunction with the arsenals of other nuclear states, could effectively bring about the end of humanity. Britain's continued renewal of our nuclear weapons, with not even the slightest nod towards potential disarmament, is a clear violation of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and other international obligations. The justification for Britain's weapons of mass destruction is that we need it to defend ourselves. From who? Trident is a weapon designed for the Cold War era, and I'm sure many of us here, were not even alive when the Soviet Union fell. It is completely unable to defend us from the threats we face in the 21st century, and defence experts recognise that themselves. Looking at the states that have disarmed, are they any less secure now? Have South Africa, Ukraine, Belarus or Kazakhstan been nuked? Personally, I think cutting an entire generation adrift from higher education poses a far greater threat to us than nuclear disarmament ever will. In fact, I think nuclear weapons make us less safe. It makes us a target in the event of a nuclear attack, whether deliberate or accidental. And let us not forget that the US has become minutes from launching nuclear weapons when their radars mistook a flock of geese for incoming Soviet missiles. I can't understand how security could ever be derived from a system of mutually assured destruction. I also find it bizarre that politicians say that it's okay for us to have weapons of mass destruction capable of destroying humanity because we need them to protect us from other states with the same weapons. But at the same time, they condemn young people who carry knives on the street using the same logic to defend themselves from other people carrying knives. Politicians tell young people to unilaterally set down their knives. and it's time they took their own advice and unilaterally gave up their nuclear weapons. We're now told we can expect austerity to extend well into the next Parliament, but it's that same Parliament that will take the vote to commit us to spending £100 billion on Trident. When education, the NHS, benefits for the poorest and support for the disabled are being slashed, the government will be splashing out on an incredibly dangerous, morally reprehensible and entirely useless nuclear weapon system. Why not instead invest that money in our National Health Service, which saves lives rather than takes lives? Why not use some of that money to provide free education for all, to create new stable jobs for working class people in the green economy, or to implement a mass council house building programme to deal with our chronic housing crisis? There are far better ways we can spend money than on nuclear weapons, and that's why 3/4 of young people want Trident scrapped.